Okay, I think this is working. Yeah, I think it's working. All right. Sorry about that. I don't know what I'm doing, so trying to get this all set up and working was kind of a pain, but I think we're good. Let's go to the show. Hey, look, we got cool transitions. Oh, yeah, sweet. Woo! Fun times. Cool. Okay, so welcome to Build. My name is Nick. If you guys didn't catch yesterday's episode, or you didn't watch it because there's an hour of me talking to myself, that's fine. I'll do a quick recap, talk about where we got to, what we're doing here, and what the plan is for today. So the idea of this is basically to do some sort of artificial limitation, so that way we can learn. Learning is good. In this case, the artificial limitation is I'm not allowed to use any sort of quote unquote true sequencer. So what that means is I can't manually punch in steps. I have this nice push to controller over here that you guys can see. I won't be using it. I'm just using it as a mixer right now. So uh, I have Hermod over here that can also punch in steps and stuff like that. I'm not going to be using that either. I have to come up with other ways to get a sequence. So yesterday was focused on getting the Symphonian up and going. So the Symphonian is basically acting as the main quantizer for everything. I have it set up so that I can swap between chords using the tetrapad. And right now it's just on the chords of the C major scale. So let's hear what that sounds like. So that voice is pretty straightforward. What we're doing is we are taking the pitch outputs from the Symphonian in the chord voice, bringing it into the qubit chord. Each one is individually output, so each voice, root, third, fifth, and seventh, are coming out of the chord, going into the IntelliGel Quad VCA. And I'm not doing any sort of enveloping over here yet. What I do is I have the Oct using the slower LFOs on Oct, all four different ones, and I have each of those associated with one of the four voices. So what you're hearing, if I turn the chord voice back up again, is Oct basically slowly morphing over each one of those chord voices. So when they're all up, you hear all four, and it will drop, each voice individually kind of as the Oct cycles through, which I think sounds really great. Oh, the other thing, so the output, so basically I'm taking the mix output from the IntelliGel and bringing that into the 100 grit, which is giving that really kind of gritty distortion sound. Not quite guitar, close to it though, I would say. So that's where that's coming from. That is going into the DV, so the Desmodus Versio, which is the reverb from Noise Engineering. That is adding just a little bit of reverb. It's not fully wet. That would be fully wet. Sounds pretty good, but it's a little dialed back from that. And it's just, turning that mono signal into a nice stereo sound, and that's what you're hearing into the mix. So that is the chord voice. The ARP voice is something super simple right now. I'll probably change it at some point, but it is fine for now. Cool. So the ARP voice is actually the Acid Rain chainsaw, but I'm using it as a monophonic voice, not as a polyphonic voice. So I think it sounds really great. The detuning of the chainsaw is really cool. You get that super saw effect. Filtering from that is going into the Linnaeus. I'm not really doing anything fancy there. The Linnaeus is a lot. I found so far that when I use it in a kind of simple tame mode, it seems to be better. You can get crazy with it. It has like built-in LFOs and stuff like that to really go nuts. I haven't dove that far into it yet, but it is a nice, clean stereo filter when you want it to be, which is cool. So the filter cutoff is being modulated by the envelope from Quart, and right now that is just being triggered off of square waves coming from PAMs. Nothing fancy here. Cool. So that is the... Wow, I'm spacing. That is the arpeggio voice right now. Like I said, we might change that. Probably not today. We'll talk about today's plans in a minute. Let's turn that down all the way. Oops, not the mic. And then finally we have the bass voice. She's not super bassy right now, but we can fix that. Let's turn it down, actually. There we go. That's a little more bassy. I'm not super happy with this one yet, so if we get time, we might change it. This one is pretty straightforward, though. What it is it is using the piston Honda to give the actual pitch. That is going into the Javelin, which is doing the envelope, and it's combo with the VCA. And right now that's just going straight into the output. So nothing fancy there. It's a pretty simple patch. The cool part is the actual pitch is coming from Zadar. I'm working on a better camera setup. I'll be able to swing this cool camera in and get a nice close-up, but I don't have that set up yet. But essentially what we're doing is Zadar has a lot of funky envelopes with a lot of air quotes around it, in that it is a, triggered modulated voltage. This one is super wavy, right? It's jumping up and down. So we're actually using that and feeding that into the Symphonian, and the Symphonian is making sense of it based off of triggers from the microgrids down here, which is just a clone of the mutable instruments grids, but smaller. So every time the trigger comes out from the microgrids, it's triggering both the quantization on the Symphonian, but also the firing of the envelope on the Javelin. So that is what it is right now. Like I said, I'm probably going to change this. I think, one, the voice is not super interesting at the moment, so that's probably going to get tweaked. And two, I'm going to steal the grids in here in a minute in order to do the drums. So we might have to come up with some way to trigger the bass voice without grids, or doing some sort of mult. But that's to come. So yeah, hi. Cool. So cameras, I got some more cameras set up. You can see this is now the main camera over here. I have a webcam set up so you can actually see me, which I don't know if it's a good thing or not. If you're interested in that, maybe let me know. Let me know in the comments. You can see my really messy office behind me. Fun times. I do have Bitwig on the screen now, which is cool. So I shouldn't be doing too much in here, but you will at least be able to see if I'm talking about something, assuming the UI is actually somewhat responsive, which doesn't look like it will be. But if I'm talking about something in Bitwig, this is where it will be. Starting off, so the plan for today... Did that work? No? Oh, yeah. Plan for the day. So, yesterday was focused on building more melodic parts with the chord, building out the chord voice and building out that bass voice. Today the plan is drums and sequencing drums and creating cool drum noises without using a step sequencer. So I actually have a Metron. It's not in the case right now, but if you're looking for a really solid drum sequencer or any sort of trigger sequencer, that one's really good, but I don't have it in here intentionally. I want to build out drum sounds without that. So it's kind of cheating a little bit if you consider Grids a sequencer. Grids lets you do a whole bunch of fun stuff with triggers, and it has essentially 3 channels of triggers and then 3 accent outputs. We have a couple modules that can do the accents. You can also just use the accents on another drum entirely, or another drum voice. So we're going to be using Grids today to sequence some drums to go along with our various voices. And we're going to mess with that. So let's start patching. Right now the clock coming into Grids from Pam's, I think our BPM is set really high. I'm going to turn this way down. I like slow things. So let's turn that down to start. I'm turning it down to like 90, just so you guys you probably can't see the screen, but cool. So that's 90 BPM. All right. I'm going to take out the bass trigger for now because we don't need it for this moment. We'll have to repatch it in order to get the bass voice doing stuff again, but that's fine. And I'm going to move the mic so I can patch. What I'm going to start is I'm going to patch in the kick drum. And I have the Roland 531. That's primarily been acting as my drum mixer. I'm probably going to continue to do that here. It's nice. It's 8 channels. You can pan it. You can individually mute tracks, which is really cool since we don't really have any other way to do that short of doing it in the DAW. So we can individually mute the drum voices. The mutes aren't CV'd, but that's okay. You know, you can still do it by hand and still kind of play it that way, which is nice. Yeah, let's patch something up. So I'm just starting with the kick voice, which is going to be the WMD Creator. Oh, and I do have to cut over and add a drum track in Bitwig. Let me do that. Add an audio track. The input of this is going to be, let's call it 15 and 16. Cool. And we have to arm in the track. That way we can actually hear it. Cool. So we have a kick. Oh, let me throw the compressor on the drum track. Oops. Just so you guys can see what I'm looking at. The voice is now patched in, so I have grids going out into the crater, both the accent and the trigger outputs, and that's going into the mixer, and the mixer is going stereo into the NW2S. So the way my system is set up is I have 2 NW2S IO balanced modules, and those are taking all of the audio in and out of the Eurorack via 4 DB25 cables running behind the rack, and then to a regular audio rack sitting under my desk where the audio interface is. So Happy to talk about that if anybody has any questions. Santa Apotheca, sorry, I think this is someone from the Discord. What cameras am I using? So I have a Logitech 922 webcam that thankfully I've had for a while now. I know those have been pretty unavailable throughout the COVID issue, the COVID crisis. Webcams have been a hot commodity. So that's the webcam that's looking at me. Over here, this camera, pointing. This camera is a Fujifilm X-T4, and it just has a 16 millimeter wide angle lens, and it's just doing 1080 out. It's not even recording right now. It's actually just straight going into what I bought the other day. Whoops, and see, I touched it and broke it. I bought one, but I have another one coming, which is just a cheap video capture card, just a USB one. It costs $20. It can only do up to 30 frames per second, but that's fine. I don't really care. And I'm not doing video games. I don't really need any higher frame rate than that for what we're looking at. So that's the camera setup today. I have a GoPro, which will eventually be tied in the same way the X-T4 is tied in with. I have a second video capture card coming in, and that'll be going to the GoPro. It's actually mounted on a microphone arm, so it's really nice. I can just kind of bring it in, and if I want to get a close-up of something, I'll be able to do that, which is cool. So that should hopefully be set up by the end of the week, but I don't have that quite ready right now. So that's the cameras and Haivision. I did remember that. I saw your post earlier in the other chat, so thank you for watching. I appreciate the one fan. Cool. Where were we? Oh, I was going to add just a simple compression line onto the drum track. So let's do that. I'm not getting too fancy. I'm literally just going to use the multiband compression preset from Bitwig because I'm lazy. Assuming I can type. If anybody from Bitwig happens to watch this, your search in the device and presets thing really could use some work because it seems like you have to type the specific word out versus like some sort of fuzzy guessing, which would be really handy. There we go. That sounds a bit better. A little more compression. Cool. So that's our drum. Let's add the Crucible in as the kind of hats / cymbals. Changing my view so you can actually see that this time. Cool. Cool. So that's obviously a very simple drum beat. I'm going to turn the chaos down on the cool. probably be a point where actually reading the manual for grids would have been nice, but you know, YOLO. All right, let's use our third track here on something else entirely. Whoops. I'm gonna have a little fun with this one. So the other thing I got, let me turn this down a little bit. The other thing I got fairly recently was the Interstellar Radio. You can add noise to Crucible to act more like a hat rather than a cymbal, by the way. Ooh, let's try that. Thank you, Z Zora. I appreciate it. By the way, if you guys are from the DivvyKid Discord, you know, let me know and I'll sync up with you after. If you are watching this later, come chat with us on the DivKid Discord. It's pretty awesome. Having a lot of fun over there. So let's try that. I'm going to take the noise from, where are you? Kinks. Yes, there we go. Cable. Ooh, interesting. I think that's going to need an envelope in order to work, so let's do that. There we go. Cool. So now that sounds a bit more like a hi-hat, a little bit. I'm no drum expert, so don't critique me too heavily on that. But if we take out the noise, cool. So now if we wanted to, we could even take the triggers and put those on a switch rather than, I mean, I guess they kind of are, but it's interesting thing to think about, muting triggers versus muting audio. I found that muting triggers is a bit nicer because it has the same effect, but then it allows the audio to kind of ring out when you are triggering things versus just hard cutting the audio. I find that doesn't sound too good sometimes. I mean, it depends on the thing, but I think in this case for drums, like you can kind of hear it, right? It sounds weird. Versus if I just don't trigger the envelope in the first place, well, I guess in this case it would be the LFO, which is annoying, but that's just because it's patched in. Let's see here. I'm going to change this around. All right, now you can hear the difference, right? So this is the trigger going into the extra envelope for the cymbal. So that's just muting the trigger, right? So the envelope's not even firing now, versus if I mute the audio. Which, if you do it in time, it doesn't really make a difference, but it's a little bit harder, versus if the trigger never gets there, the envelope never fires, everything sounds a little bit better. My opinion, anyway. Cool. So I was about to add our third drum voice, which should be a snare. Let's see how we want to do that. I'm going to use the quad drum, I think, for that. See, the quad drum is cool, but the menu system of it kind of sucks. Okay, real talk for a quick second here. Okay, I had this question and I Googled it and I felt really dumb after looking it up and thinking of it. So I'm going to save you all the trouble. I'm using a whole bunch of different length patch cables, and some of those patch cables are for stereo sounds. And you might think to yourself, oh, hey, you know, if you use patch cables of different length, doesn't that introduce some sort of latency into the signal? And won't your, you know, stereo effect be off? Wouldn't you hear beats off? Would the trigger be off? No. I was wondering that. I kind of concluded that that wasn't the case, but I want to tell you why. Electrons are really fast, speed of light fast, or just about. The net effect of short patch cables like these, you know, this is about 18 inches. Whoops. 18 inches, 18-inch patch cable. There we go. You can see it. There's no perceivable effect in latency. Now, if I had patch cables that were, you know, 18 miles long or 1,800 miles long, then yeah, then you would hear the latency. But for things this short, I mean, it's approaching the speed of light from one point to the other. You're actually not going to hear any difference. It's not a stupid question. I had the same question, which is why I'm answering it now and saving you guys all the trouble if you guys have a similar question. So even though, for example, right now I'm going to use 2 different length cables for a stereo output, it's actually not going to make any real difference. Cool. Cool. Okay, okay. Let's bring that chord in so we can hear what it actually sounds to some music behind it. And I think I'm going to turn down the slow on the chord voice. It's a little strange, you know, it's this kind of weird mix of ambient with a beat. I don't know if that's a genre out there, but it's a little different. It kind of works, I guess. A 100 grid, man. We can tame that a little bit. And I really like the sound of it morphing through all of the voices on the chord just with Oct. I think that's fun. We can turn it up and make it happen faster. You can kind of see the lights going crazy on this thing as it, you know, it's having a lot of fun over here. This one seems too low. It was too low, that's why. Alright, I'm gonna turn Oct back down. Yeah, okay. Okay. Drum modules, good question. So the kick is just the crater right now. No layering on that. The snare sound is coming from the quad drum. That's the only thing the quad drum is doing at the moment right now. It's just the snare. So you can hear those individually. Here's the kick. Kick. Let me turn down the chords. There's the kick. This is the cymbal, which I added the extra noise to by basically patching a second envelope with just white noise coming from Kinks into a VCA, VCA being modulated by an envelope from the Quart, and then the output of that is going to the input of the Crucible. So I can add a little flair to it. I have that, the trigger of the envelope for the extra noise is on the chainsaw switchblade. So I can just, with a button press, I can add that over here. I can also externally trigger that, which we can play with in a second. Actually, let me do that. Let me add the accent from, we'll do it from the snare line to see what that, if that actually works. So you can see it's actually, maybe you can't see it, but underneath all the cables, the switchblade is actually switching back and forth between it, but it's doing it faster than the actual triggers going into the cymbal, so you can't actually hear it. It all sounds like it's on. Let me mult the accent out from the actual third track here and bring that in. There we go. So now it should kind of flip-flop between the two as it progresses through. So every time that accent hits, it's going to swap the switch, and you can hear it just happen there on the chainsaw. Or sorry, not the chainsaw, the switchblade. So let's bring in the rest of the drums. Oh, so sorry. The snare, that is just the quad drum right now at the moment, which is fine. So this is everything now. And you can hear it switching between the two cymbal styles, which is cool. Let's see. So obviously it's not changing at all. So let's fix that. How do we want to do that is the question. I don't want it to be an LFO because I think that would be a little bit, it would be changing too much versus some sort of, let's do the random step. I think that'll be fun. I'm just going to do one channel, which is going to be the Y channel. Just too short. Okay, so what I'm doing, let me just turn this down for a sec, just to talk through this. So the way grids works, at least my loose understanding of it, is it has an XY map, X, Y, and you can select which pattern it chooses to play using that map. Basically you choose the X position, then you choose the Y position, and then under that there's a pattern. The cool thing is that you can modulate that. So I have the Y, so the X is fixed. I'm just going to leave that set to something. The Y is going to be a random voltage, and that's going to be triggered, or that's coming from the random step, but the random step's being triggered based off of PAMs, and I have it just on a division of 8. So I think that's something like every 4 bars or something like that it should change. I could be totally wrong there on my math, but the idea is there it's not every step or every note. It will change on some frequency, but not totally crazy. And it should give us, by keeping the X fixed, hopefully it should keep us a little bit tame to some subset of patterns, right? We're not changing everything. That would be a little bit too much. But that way we get a little bit of difference here without it not sounding musical, because we still want to stay within the bounds of music to what extent that we can. So let's turn the drums back up. Cool. And it's probably worth checking. I don't know if the knobs on grids act as an attenuator when there's a CV patched into it. If anybody knows in the chat, feel free to let me know. We can just mess with that actually. So the other thing that's nice about this 531 mixer is it has individual track pans. So you can keep your kick dead center and then pan drums left and right. So I just panned the cymbal over and turned it down a bit just to give it a little bit more interest. There we go. That sounds a bit better. Let's turn those chords back up. I'm sure there's probably sub rules on breaking about grids in terms of which drum voice goes to assign to which channel. If anybody has any tips on that, let me know. It does seem like channel 3, if it's anything past noon, it's just like always riding, which doesn't seem too great. And anything to the left of noon, it's like nothing. Let me go look at the manual. Looking at the manual is always a good idea. See, so it does. It's bass drum, snare drum, hi-hat, notionally. There we go. And the ARP is actually pretty fun here because that's like our lead voice at the moment. And it's literally just doing kind of a Baroque pattern over the notes in the chord, and it's just clock triggered at the moment. It's not doing anything super fancy. We can do is if we go to Bitwig, So that should have a bit of a side chaining effect on the chord voice. A little bit. You can also just lob off the low end here. Maybe not that much. We are dropping frames. Oops. I don't think the computer likes it very much when I have Bitwig open, so apologies for that. So I'm kind of happy where this is at. It's not great. I think the drums are a little bit simple. The chord voice is still my favorite. The ARP is fun, but it's not really doing anything. We turned off the bass. Let's actually bring that back in. See, what I need, but that I don't have at the moment, is a little bit more random triggers. So I had an idea. I am multing the trigger output of the snare drum twice. Is this even going to reach? Okay. Well, let's hear what I just did. Okay. So what I did was I changed PAM, so the output of the trigger for the ARP is now actually a Euclidean rhythm. So rather than it just being straight based off the clock, it's actually doing a Euclidean rhythm. A Euclidean rhythm, which is very mathy. The simplest way to put it is what you do is you set how many steps there are and then how many notes you want to fill it with. And it's based off of subdivisions of a circle. So if you imagine you have a circle and in this case, I think I divided it by 10. So you divide a circle by 10 and you fill it with 6 triggers, which is what I'm doing in this case. And it tries to do its best to balance out those 6 triggers amongst those 10 slots. But since 6 doesn't go into 10 evenly, it has to tweak it a little bit. That's my very rough explanation of what Euclidean rhythms are. You can also use Euclidean rhythms to sequence drums. And there's some pretty common Euclidean patterns that are actually found in music already that happen to fit within this Euclidean rhythm pattern. But this just gives it a little more interest on the ARP voice rather than just being every quarter note, which is not very interesting. And then for the bass, the bass is now just following the pattern of the snare drum. And you can hear that. And we're still using Zadar to feed the bass with something to quantize. Without it, if I didn't give it anything, it would just play the same note over and over and over and over and over again. Whoops, this one. Same difference, which is fine, but this actually makes it a little more interesting. And Zadar, again, is just being fired occasionally by PAMs. So right now, PAMs is really the heart of everything, which is not surprising at all that PAM often ends up as the heart of everything. I'm just going to let this play for a little bit. See, I instinctually reach for the BIA thinking that's my bass voice, but it isn't in this patch. And actually, just to make this a little more interesting, I'm going to use the LFOs from Batumi to modulate. This is the international symbol for modulation. I'm going to use those to modulate the waveforms on the Piston Honda, just so that that's changing a bit. I'm gonna turn this up tempo-wise in a bit, just to see what it sounds like. There we go. All right, I'm gonna change one thing really quick. I think the triggers on the actual envelope of the bass line are a bit too random. Because it's based on the snare drum, it doesn't really sound like a bass line. So I'm actually gonna change this. I'm gonna keep the quantization trigger the same. So it will still be quantized based off the snare drum, based off of Zadar, but the actual envelope, to fire the bassline noise, I'm gonna use a Euclidean pattern off of Pam's for that. So 1 second. Okay, that sounds a bit better already, I think. So Vincent, that's a good point. That's a great idea. 1 second. So, just to recap, what Vincent suggested is that we could record the chord changes with planar, which you definitely could do. But because I have the TET to go along with the TetraPad, I can actually record those in with that and have it play back in a loopy mode with that, which I haven't done. So let's see what that looks like. So what I'm just doing is making sure that the TET has clock. You can see it's already jumping because I already was recording. And now it might be hard to see on this angle. The chord jumps are now happening with in time based off the clock. And let's slow down that clock so it don't happen as frequently. See, I don't know enough about TET, but it might not respond to too slow of a clock like that. Thank you, Heart BPM. I appreciate it. All right. So I think I'm going to call it there. Uh, so where are we at? We got the voices going. We got the chord voice going yesterday. We got the ARP voice going a little bit today, somewhat yesterday. We got the changes from the chords going. Now we have it automated using the TET and the clock. We built out some really simple drum sequencing. We spiced up the cymbal with a little bit of envelope noise, courtesy of Kinks and some other modules. Yeah, I think that sounds pretty good. So things to do. We got to figure out some sort of lead voice. I know the ARP is kind of acting as it right now, but I think we can do a little better there. So that will be the plan for Thursday, probably Thursday evening, later. We'll see. To build out that lead voice. Yeah, so thank you guys for tuning in and checking it out. I appreciate it. If you guys like this, hit that thumbs up, smash that like and subscribe button. I know that's a cliche, but that's why it's funny. Yeah, cool. So if you guys have any feedback, feel free to post those in the comments as well, or just reach out to me. I know a lot of you guys are coming from the DivKid Discord, so thank you all for checking it out. If you guys are watching this way later, DivKid's Discord is pretty sick, and all the cool kids hang out on that. So definitely join. Yeah, cool. All right, I'm gonna end it here. Thank you guys. Stay tuned for the next one.